Let's take a look at The Walking Dead Season 6, Episode 5. This episode was basically a setup for a more action-packed later episode, but we did get some new plot points. Maggie is pregnant, which I called and I'm actually so happy for, but now sort of worried because Scott Gimple said that we will see Glenn again in some form or parts of him, and now maybe what he meant was the parts of him or some form of Glenn we're going to see is Maggie's baby, which kind of sucks and means Glenn is dead, but maybe not, and maybe that's trying to throw us off. If Glenn is dead, I'm assuming we're going to see him as a walker some point later on. Jesse and Rick ended up kissing and I'm assuming getting together, which I think everybody kind of called. We saw that coming, the sexual tension between them building, and Ron is going to be pissed. And then Tara and Denise kissed, which will also probably get together. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe this is developing into one of them dies, and I don't know, I feel like it's building into that. Them kind of bonding, it's trying to make us go, "Aw," just to rip out our hearts again. And Rick got back to Alexandria, and there's a few things that bothered me about this. One, we didn't get to see his awesome escape from the RV. And yeah, last episode with Morgan, we knew he was going to make it back okay because they added in at the end Rick yelling for them to open the gate. So it wasn't a shocker to see Rick at the beginning of this episode, but I don't know, I felt a little cheated. I wanted to see how he escaped the RV and what was going on with that and more about his hand. And I think there were a few scenes or monologues in this episode that they could have cut out or made shorter and given us a little taste of Rick escaping the RV. I just felt a teeny bit cheated. And then another thing that bothered me was Rick got back, and we know from the last time we saw him, the wolves attacked and he saw that they had baby formula. And what probably was going through his head was, oh shit, Judith is in trouble, or something like that. And then we show him get back to Alexandria, and then he just makes a freaking speech to them and doesn't ask about what happened, doesn't ask for an explanation. We don't get to see Rick respond to the wolves attacking. And I'm assuming there was a bit of a time jump from Rick getting in the gates, and then there was some time and maybe they explained it to him, and then he did his whole, "Oh, you've never experienced this before" speech, and you guys all need to be quiet. But I still felt kind of cheated again, like with the RV, of seeing how Rick responded to this and the anger for it, and him seeing Judith and maybe talking to Carol. And I'm assuming maybe he's going to talk to Carol later on about this. I don't know. Aaron and Maggie bonding I thought was great. Aaron admitting to the community that he was the one that ended up causing the wolves attack. Maybe not a good idea. We know that the community doesn't seem to be too forgiving, as with the jabs they had at Spencer, but I understand why Aaron did it. He understands that they need to trust Rick and his group to survive, and they were very disgruntled with the herd actually coming to Alexandria and were turning a bit on Rick and blaming him, and Aaron wanted the community to know none of this was Rick's fault. This was his fault, so that they could trust Rick and depend on him, and Rick can get them through the situation with the horde. So I understand why he did it. I'm just a little worried now that maybe Aaron is going to be outcast from the community by the Alexandrians, who hold grudges that people they cared about died, and this whole mess happened because of Aaron. I think Aaron is going to help Maggie, and with the loss of Glenn, whether Glenn is actually dead or not, if he's not dead, it's going to be a long time before we see him. AMC is gonna drag this out. It's like Sophia all over again, I think, is what it feels like to me, but I think we actually care about Glenn a lot more than Sophia, and that sounds really terrible to say. Maggie, she was a little bit cold. I kind of understand where she's coming from. She's lost a lot of people. She lost her dad, she lost her sister, she lost her farm. I mean, she's lost a lot of people, so she's developed a very pragmatic, just kind of steely exterior. But when she says, if Glenn is out there, he needs me. If he's dead, I want to know so that I can move on. And it just, I don't know, it just hit me that it just was so cold and blunt. But you have to be that way at this point. A lot of people being sentimental and holding on, she did that with Beth for how long? So she really needed to just have that closure instead of holding on for hope like she did with her sister. And I'm glad they didn't go out to find him, honestly. Also, those sludge zombies in the sewer were awesome. Ew, when Maggie's hand just went right through the walker and couldn't get a grip. They are doing a great job with disgusting walkers this season. I'm also wondering how the secret sewer will be utilized in the future. There's going to be some form of payoff, I can just feel it. Deanna is on a wild roller coaster of emotion. I am glad that we saw her sketching on the plans, still thinking that Alexandria had a future, even though she just seems so torn down and defeated after Rick did his little speech and she walked away. But man, after Spencer lays into her, she just looked like she was on edge. And for the record, I don't like Spencer. Really? Her son and husband are dead and you're gonna lay that bullshit on her? I get what he's saying, I understand where he's coming from, but still, wow. I am making the bold prediction that Spencer will be dead by the end of the season, if not this season, very early in the next season, and that may drive Deanna a little bit more over the edge if she survives this whole business as well, but I think Spencer is on his way out. He's becoming very unlikable more and more, and I think that is the point that the writers are trying to do to make us just dislike this guy. If you're wondering about the Latin that was on her plan, StorySync translated it. It was, "Someday this pain will be useful to you." And side note, I'm also kind of hoping that her stabbing the walker repeatedly in the chest was out of anger and not she just didn't think to stab it in the head. I think it was venting, and I really hope it just was venting, not her not knowing what to do. But according to StorySync, it was a nice bottle of whiskey. Ron, that kid is up to something. I thought for a hot second when he got up on the wall with Rick that he was actually going to try to push Rick off the wall, and then they were going to struggle a little bit, and either Rick was going to end up restraining him or accidentally pushing him off the wall. When he didn't actually try anything, I was really surprised. And I do not buy for a second the whole, "Oh, you're right, teach me how to shoot" thing. Either he's trying to get close to Rick to do something, or he wants to learn to shoot to kill Rick. Something. Yeah, teenagers have mood swings and teenagers can be inconsistent because of all the hormones and, neurons connecting in their brain still, but I don't know, that just seemed a little bit too change of pace for Ron. Although, is he really the diabolical planner? I don't know, I really think that Ron is up to something. The bleeding walls at the end, I bet you someone else's soul the walkers are going to push through the wall. They're not going to maybe collapse the whole thing, but where two walls connect, they're going to end up weakening it and making a little hole to get through, and they're going to start filtering through, and then the Alexandrians and Rick's group are going to have to deal with the horde spilling into Alexandria, and there are actually some really cool panels in the comics of the group dealing with a horde, and if we get that, oh my gosh, I would be so excited. Does anyone else want to see Eugene invent a zombie killing device for On the Wall? I kinda do. It would make sense for them to start thinking about clearing the walkers. Last add-on, if you were wondering about the woman Jesse ended up killing, this was David's wife. David was that guy that wrote the note to give to his wife when he was bit during the horde dealing episode. She ended up committing suicide when he didn't come back. Alright, what were your thoughts? Was this a filler or a dramatic build-up to a more action-packed episode? Do you think Ron is up to something? Do you think Carl actually left and isn't with Judith and Ron lied? Do you think that the Alexandrians are going to forgive Aaron? And do you think Maggie being pregnant is what Scott Gimple meant by "you will see Glenn again in some form or parts of him"? Besides that, make sure you come back for Comics vs. Show for this episode. I think there's enough material to make an episode this week. Besides that, we do Game of Thrones on Sunday and Wednesday. We do comics on Thursday and Star Wars usually on Monday and Friday.